Hello everyone, my name is Chris Green, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to record your first song in Presonus Studio One. Everything's going to be happening from right here at my desk. I've done this video several times already on my channel. You don't have to go back and watch all the different iterations of recording your first song, but just know that those are out there. And with every time I do this video, there's usually something different that pokes out. So you may want to look at those in the future. I do want to encourage you to hit the like and subscribe buttons. So if you're missing out on any of the content I'm covering or you want a deeper dive, you'll be able to see those videos as they're coming out pretty much on a weekly basis here on my channel. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. We'll get right to it. So the first thing we need to do with Presonus Studio One is actually install the software. If you already have Presonus Studio One installed, but you haven't started recording yet, feel free to just delete the software and start from scratch. I'll show you my recommended installation, and you can, of course, follow along as well. All right, first things first, no matter if you bought the software from Sweetwater, some sort of dealer like that, you do need to go to my.presonus.com and create a new account. I won't be showing that process here on the video just because, you don't need to know my username and login stuff, but my.presonus.com is where you're going to be able to download all the software that you're going to use with Presonus Studio One. If you need help activating the software license that you got, usually like when it comes to Sweetwater, as I mentioned earlier, usually they're pretty good about sending you an email after you've made a purchase, giving you instructions on how to access the software. But once you do, once it's connected to your my.presonus account, you should have access to Presonus Studio One version 7 or whatever version you might be running. So right below here, I want to click Download Installer so we can go ahead and get going. And then, of course, if you have other products available on your my.presonus account, I recommend you go ahead and create that account. Just know that when you open up Studio One, there's going to be an option for you to enable all of your purchased software products. So you don't necessarily have to download them straight from this website. All right, then if you're using a Mac computer, you're just going to go to your downloads folder. Same thing will pretty much apply for Windows, no matter what I'm doing in this video. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the same for you Windows users out there. Now I'm going to take the Studio One 7 icon and drag it over to my applications folder. Now, once it's in my applications folder, I can simply just click the Studio One 7 icon. I want to go ahead and tell that it's downloaded from the internet. It's totally fine. Just go ahead and open. Now you'll see Studio One is basically searching through your hardware, whatever computer you're using. If you have a lot of purchased virtual instruments and plugins running in the background, this process may take longer for you than normal. If this is your first journey into recording music, like in general, it may be pretty quick when it opens up Studio One. But if it does take a really long time for Studio One to open, just know that that's not the norm. Next time you open Studio One, it should go much faster. So here on the screen, it's already scanned my system and it's found a few songs that I had already been working on previously, even before I deleted the Studio One software. But we need to talk about kind of what we're looking at here. First things first, we need to get to installations. Studio One, in all cases and purposes, has been installed, but we need to make sure we have certain plugins and virtual instruments installed before we create a new session. So I'm going to go up to the top where it says Studio One. I'm going to select Studio One Installation. Now here it's going to be retrieving all those products that are associated with your my.presonus account. If you don't have any of this stuff available, if it doesn't say available downloads or installed content, or if you need to register Presonus Studio One, just go to Studio One and then Activation. Now on Studio One Activation, it's going to ask you to log in to your My Presonus account. As soon as you do, your software license should show up. Okay, I'm not going to show you on this video what my software license key is, but that is where you're going to activate my purchase version of Studio One. If I click this downward facing arrow, it'll show my product key, and then I can click Activate. I've already done so I have an activated version. Looking at available downloads, there's a few things I don't recommend that you download. So you don't want to go with minimal installation or recommended or full installation, really. Better just go through and check off the ones that you want. Demos are probably unnecessary. And there may be a few of you out there that may want to make use of a demo. You can certainly download those as well. Documentation is going to be like PDFs, but that's really what YouTube is for. So just subscribe to my channel. You don't have to download these documents and folders. All right, impulse responses might be useful to you. Impulse responses are going to be some high quality samples. Like when you're using virtual instruments, the more dependent you are on like MIDI controllers, you may want to look at some of these extra downloads. Legacy and compatibility, if you're wanting some synthesizers, you can certainly check those out. I'll tell you the things that I'm mainly interested in. Like if you're doing a podcast, you may want to download these loop libraries. Loop libraries are basically going to be like pre-recorded audio files that you can just drag and drop into your session. These will include like drum kit presets. So if you want to hear a drum groove and just drag it into your session. If you're not a musician, you're mainly a vocalist, you're going to be highly dependent on loops. So you can download loops if you want to. The Presence XT core library might be interesting to you. I'm leaving all of this stuff unchecked. If I go over to my installed content, you'll be able to see the things that I've already installed on my system. Deep Flight 1 is a synthesizer that is unique to Presonus Studio One version 7. I'm running the perpetual license Pro version. They recently changed the naming system, so forgive me if I speak incorrectly. But Deep Flight 1 is going to be for Studio One 7 users. It's a synthesizer, not super necessary if you're not into synthesizer stuff. Ampire, to me, if you're a guitar player, and even if you already have your own electric guitar amp in the room, even if you have your own amp plugins, you can go ahead and have Ampire installed. It's not that hefty of a software, but it is Presonus's version of like electric guitar amps and electric guitar pedals. It's handy to have, and it's also going to work with the software pretty well. The Artist Instrument Library, I highly recommend you go ahead and download both of these, Volume 1 and Volume 2. The Artist Library used to come with Studio One Artist version, but it's going to give you a little bit of all the different virtual instruments. You're going to get your organs, your pianos, mallets, things that you may not even think you're going to make use of. It's just a minimal, lightweight version of those. All right, Melodyne Essential. If you have access to Melodyne, I highly recommend that you download it. Studio One has a built-in integration with Melodyne that works pretty great. Now, Melodyne is used for tuning vocals mostly, but you can pretty much tune anything. My bass guitar, we may get to this later. Often I will tune my bass guitar because it's just poorly intonated, okay? Impact Drum Kits, highly recommend you download that. It's not just going to be like hip-hop kits, but it's got some pretty good kits already built in. Then you have Lead Architect, Services Support, Studio Grand. That is their grand piano sound. We'll probably be making use of that in this video. So you'll be seeing a grand piano being used there. Symphonic Orchestra and so forth. You can see the different ones I've already got installed. Splice, if you're looking to use Splice, you're going to end up with a paid version. So it is a subscription on top of your Presonus Studio One subscription or perpetual license. I sometimes will use the free loops and samples that come with Splice, but if you want full access, you will have to pay extra for that. Stem separation, I have a video on my channel about that. Stem separation is great for if you're doing karaoke or you're singing along to a 2-track. You can drag and drop files into the system. Into Studio One, you can put a 2-track, and it will basically, by using AI, it will separate the drums, the bass, the vocal, and then a track they call other for all the other stuff. And then you can like mute the vocal or mute the drums. It'll come in handy. I've got a video on my channel already about that. You can check out if interested. But all the other stuff is kind of optional. Those are the main deals you want to be concerned with. I would say Ampire, the Artist Instrument Library, Melodyne, Impact Kits. And if you don't have a good piano virtual instrument, check out Presonus Studio Grand. So that's enough for the installations. Once you got all that installed, you may have to reboot Studio One. Next, we need to go to setup. I need to make sure that I've got my audio interface plugged in. So right here in the middle of the screen, you can see it says Dell U2720Q. That is my monitor that I'm using to look at right now. Obviously, don't want to be recording with my Dell monitor. So I'm going to change this. So just click where it said Dell. I'm going to go to the audio device tab under audio setup. And I want to change my playback device. I click this drop-down menu here, and here I can see Scarlett 2i2 4th Gen. Once you click it, it'll basically load it as it's also set as my recording device, so that's great as well. Make sure if you're using an audio interface, highly recommend you check out the Scarlett 2i2. Got a video on my channel. You can check that out as well. It's a very simple audio interface, and I believe it's one of the most popular, if not the most popular audio interface on Amazon today. Next thing, if you want to be concerned about, I'll just rattle off the numbers and we can cover in a future video what this stuff means. But if you go to block size, it's currently set to 512 samples. That's usually decent enough. This is going to have to do with some of the delay we hear in our recording. I'm using the direct monitoring that comes off of the Scarlett interface. So I'm just going to set it to 512. I don't have to worry too much about latency. I've got my sample rate set to 48 kilohertz. If you're just starting out and recording music, just set it to 48 kilohertz for now. It's very similar to how we talk about 4K, 1080p, 720p, like when we're talking in the video world, high definition. Just know that 48K is by and large what the majority of platforms out there are supporting. And then also, if you're like me, if you grew up in the 90s, listened to music in the early 2000s, most of that stuff was either 44.1 or 48K, and it sounded just fine. So set it to 48K, we'll move on. On the processing tab, I always set mine to maximum. This will also come down to what kind of computer you're working with, how much RAM you have available. I set mine to maximum, as we'll get to in the future when I'm recording electric guitar. By setting it to maximum on dropout protection, that enables me to use their low latency switch, which is going to come in handy when I'm trying to record a digital version of a guitar amp using a plugin in real time. Set that to maximum. If you're having trouble, like your computer is constantly crashing or you're hearing pops and clicks, you might need to drop your dropout protection down to like medium. I wouldn't go lower than medium though. Also on audio device, if you're getting a lot of pops and clicks, turn it up to 1024 and see if the audio cleans up a bit. Processing precision, I've got it set to 32. Down here, you can see this wonderful latency we're dealing with. I'm being a little tongue in cheek there because 145 milliseconds is brutal latency. Even in low latency mode, we're at 38 milliseconds. So that's getting on up there, but shouldn't be a problem. Works out for me 9 times out of 10. So once you're done with that, click the OK button. If you're using something like the Presonus Audio Box or any other sort of audio interface, obviously you need to have that stuff installed. Make sure that under your setup tab, make sure you can clearly see your audio interface is there, that you're ready to go. With that being said, we're going to go up and create a new session. So I'm going to click right here where it's got the plus button for new. It's going to bring me to this window where it's asking me some of the details on this session. So first things first, the name of this song is going to be called the YouTube song. I've got, as always, an original song for you today that we'll be recording. It's asking me where do I want to save this song to. So it defaults to your documents folder. Mine is under Chris Documents. Then there's a folder for Studio One, and inside that folder is songs. If you need to change that, you can just click these 3 dots here, and you can navigate to any sort of folder you want. Highly recommend you just stick to default for now. In the future, you can start saving your songs and sessions onto a portable SSD if you'd like to, but it gets a little messy. So just stick to Documents folder for now. Sample rate, we already talked about that before. I've got mine set to 48. Keep it at 48. Resolution, I'm going to go with 32-bit float. Time base is bars. The length of the song, it's not going to be 8 minutes. This song will probably end up being like 1 minute long. I'll try to keep it short for you out there in YouTube world. Tempo, not too sure about it yet. We'll go with, let's take a guess. Let's do 80. I'll be closer to 80 than 130, but you can just click wherever it says tempo. You can type in the numbers there. Time signature is going to be 4/4. Not sure yet on the key of the song. Guess for now, let's go with G. Stretch audio files to tempo. If you're working with a lot of loops, like I mentioned earlier, if you're the type person that maybe you're a singer and you're not going to do a lot of instrumentation, you might want to check this box for stretch audio files to tempo. What that will do is every time you drag and drop an MP3 or something into your session, it will make sure that that MP3 is at the proper time signature or tempo with your song. Okay. From there, I'm not going to choose any of these templates. I do have some templates available at my website. You can check links in the description. No pressure there. But I do have just a basic setup. We won't go any templates here. We'll click OK. Now, when I click OK, I now have a fresh window in Presonus Studio One. Let's take a look around Presonus Studio One so I can show you a general layout of the things you need to be aware of. Here at the bottom left of the screen, you'll see a tab for performance. If I click on this, it's going to bring up this little window here. And what this is doing is it's giving me a visual readout of what my computer is having to work on right now. Now you notice it's at 0%, maybe even 1%. We don't have any instruments loaded. We haven't recorded anything. This is a great sign, especially if you set your device settings to the ones that I mentioned earlier. If you set to dropout protection maximum, this computer is quite hefty. I believe I'm running an M3 Pro MacBook with 18 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD. It's doing quite well. I've got links in the description for any of the studio gear. If you're interested in what I'm using, you can certainly check that out. That is an Amazon affiliate, but The CPU is working just fine. If this thing were spiking up at like 70, 80%, you would see it start to turn like this meter will gradually turn to orange and then red. That's where you have a lot of issues. So if you start changing some of your dropout protection, if you're recording at a low sample rate and you're still having issues with Presonus Studio One, it probably comes down to your computer. You might need some more RAM or you might need a beefier processor with your device. So that is the performance meter. Just keep an eye on that. Make sure that it is not spiking. Down here at the bottom, we have this kind of like the play button, the record button, the stop button. Go back to the beginning of the song. I'll tell you a few shortcuts along the way. If you're using the keyboard, basically look for your left arrow. This is the arrow that's pointed to the left. If you hit that button, which is also the comma key, that will return your playhead back to the beginning. So here at the top, I kind of have a ruler. This is telling me measure by measure. Right here, this is measure 2. This is the downbeat of measure 3. And if I scroll to the right, I can see measure 4. I can see the third beat of measure 4. If I need to go back to the beginning of the song, I can simply hit that comma key or the arrow key, hit me all the way back to 1. So you can use that instead of going down here. Also, if you need to play the song, you can simply just hit spacebar for play, spacebar again to stop. The loop region, we'll get to that later in the video, that can be accessed with the question mark key or the slash key. That's kind of the shortcut for having a loop. Loop region, if I highlight this area here, several measures worth, I can then hit the question mark key you see is blue. If I hit the space bar, you can see the playhead will just, for infinity, it will just keep going back. You'll be listening to the same measure over and over again. And then, of course, you can change the loop region. If you zoom out, you can make it stretch the entire song if you want to. It really comes in handy. In general, just navigating your session, if you're using a trackpad, you can use the pinch functions to zoom in and then zoom out. If you squeeze your fingers together, kind of zoom out, giving you more of a view. I always prefer using some sort of trackpad when I'm navigating these sessions. It's just easier when you're zooming in and out and making edits like that. Of course, I can swipe left and right with my 2 fingers. If you're used to using a MacBook, it's very intuitive, easy to use. Next to that, over here, we have the metronome session. Your metronome is your click track. It's going to be giving you a sound every time you hit a certain beat within the song. If you want to change your metronome settings, just click the little gear icon, the little wrench. It'll bring up the metronome setup. You can feel free to copy my settings if you want to. This is just what I happen to be using at the moment. I've got the Tools 1 sound set for my accent. The beat is a clave. Let's take a listen to this. All of these sounds can be changed, and then you can adjust the volume of how loud they are using these faders here. If I hit spacebar, you should be able to hear it. Now that's extremely loud. To change the overall volume of your metronome, I want you to go down to the mix button, bottom there. When you hit the mix button, it should bring up this screen here. And just above the main fader where it has the number 0 dB, just above that, there's this little stack where it says click volume. If you hover your mouse, if you click and drag this down, you can turn your click volume down to something like -14. If I hit spacebar now, that's a lot more usable than going with 0. When clicks are set to 0 dB, and it's right up at the maximum volume that they can be, it's just too loud. You don't want your click or metronome being too loud because your microphone will be able to hear that coming out of your headphones especially. So that's the metronome. You can get more deep into that if you're interested, but we're covering the basics here. Again, your timing, if you're doing your song in 3/4 or 6/8, you can simply make changes there. You change the key of the song. This one does need to be in G, so I'm going to switch to G major. There's a transpose function in Studio One version 7. We won't be using that in this video. The tempo is fun. You can actually use the tap feature. If you know exactly what it needs to be, click the numbers. Right now I have 80 selected. I can change it to 79. I can also change it to something like 79.27. Be as detailed as you want. I'm just going to stick to whole numbers for the most part. There is a tap tempo feature. So if you hover your mouse over the word tempo, I'm then going to take my finger and I'm going to click for every beat of whatever the song I'm doing. So I've got the song in my head now. I'm just going to sing along and I'm going to click every time I'm snapping. Okay, we're about 96. We'll check that later once we get to recording. You can change that at any time, but before you start recording any analog tracks or audio, not as a big deal when we get to MIDI tracks, but when you're recording live instruments, you want to get your click track and metronome set sooner than later. It's very painful to go in and stretch audio. So then to the right, we have our edit window, which we'll get to in a few minutes. We have the mix window, which we briefly touched on when we were changing the metronome settings. And then the browse tab, which is usually open by default. You don't have to keep the browse tab open, but this is essentially like your file explorer or your finder window, but strictly for your audio stuff. So we'll be using the instruments tab. This is where we have like our virtual instruments stored, like our drum machine or our virtual piano. The effects tab, these are all of the plugins that when it comes to mixing, if we want to EQ or compress some things, we have our effects tab. Loops are any of those that you might have downloaded already earlier in the video when we went over installations. That's where your loops are going to be found. There is a new Splice integration, which I briefly mentioned earlier. Just know that it will cost money if you sign up for the paid plan. It's a monthly expense. Your files tab is more like your finder window. I'm not using the cloud or the shop, but if you go to the pool tab, the pool tab will come up in the future because as you're recording music, even if you delete it from the timeline and it's no longer listenable on your session, you open up the pool tab. This is where all of your audio is being stored. So as soon as you hit record, you start playing something, you stop the recording, you hit delete, you think the file is gone. It's not gone. It's always in the pool unless you go to remove unused tracks, which we'll get to at some other time. Okay, so that is a browse tab. Then across the top of the screen, there's not a whole lot of features we're going to cover in this video other than the cursor tools, which I will shout out as we're going. Basically, this is what your mouse or your cursor is using at any given moment. I'm pretty much always going to stick to the number 1 key. So if you hit 1 on your keyboard, it will basically default to your arrow tool. Number 2 is going to be your range tool. I don't use the range one that much. Within the smart tool or the arrow tool, number 1, you actually have a function of the range tool. We'll get to that later. The main ones I'm going to be concerned with are the split tool, number 3. And we might take a look at the paint tool when it comes to using MIDI. Recording drums, MIDI drums, anything like that, we'll use the paint tool. But 9 times out of 10, I'm staying with the arrow. And then there's this handy feature. Like I said, I'm mainly concerned with that split tool. If you hit the 1 key, you see how it cycles over and over again. It's just going to cycle through all of these. Well, whatever cursor, you have that blue line underneath. I've got mine set to the split tool. What you can do is on the Mac, you can hit the command key. And as long as I'm holding the command key, I now have access to whatever that tool is. So that's very handy for me since I mainly am using the split tool and the arrow tool. I default to the arrow tool, and then my quick command or my quick cursor is going to be the split tool. So I can just hold command, make a few cuts, let go, and it goes back to the arrow. On the left here, we have a few different things to be concerned with. The inspector tab. The inspector tab is giving us a small kind of zoomed in look at one individual track at a time. So once we start to populate the song, once we have acoustic guitar, electric guitar, vocals, anytime I click any track, I will have a small readout of every plugin and the routing that that track has. It's very handy. I pretty much always will keep the inspector tab open. All right, working our way left to right, this wrench tool gives you some customized options. If you want to show track notes or track icons visually, that can help out a lot. We'll go ahead and check off the track icons feature. We'll get to that later once we start adding some tracks. We won't be concerned with automation just yet in this video. A few other things we want to open. Your marker tool is going to be your start and end for your song. I'm going to show you a different way to export your songs. Markers can be useful if you're trying to make sure you know where the chorus is or a certain section of the song. But if you have the time for it, open up this burger stack next to your plus button for add tracks and open up the arranger tool. Okay, I'll go ahead and get rid of markers. But the arranger tool is great because it's like those tabs you would put in your binder as a kid. If I double click anywhere in the arranger tab, I now have this tab for intro. So I can make this intro, which for this song is basically no intro. I'm just going to say the first 4 measures are going to be dedicated for my intro. And then after that, we're going to go We're going to go a few measures down for the verse. And then we're going to have a simple chorus at the end. So as you can see with my arrangement view, if my verse is starting on measure 5, I can simply select it here. Not only that, but if you right click this tab and then click the little blue icon, you can change the color of this tab. You can go crazy with it. Oftentimes the chorus is going to be sort of a red color, verses are yellow. You can literally make this anything you want. And of course, you can slice this thing up. If I use my cursor tool, I can hit 3 on the keyboard. I can make a cut here. So we have 2 verses or 2 choruses, or I can hold the command key down, have access to my split tool as well. Hit Command Z to go backwards in time as far as you'd like to undo some mistakes. We'll keep it like that for now. I'm going to turn off my loop region. So that is basically an overview of everything we need to be looking at when you're looking at Presonus Studio One. Now's the fun part where we need to start recording instruments. All right, now it's time to start recording our first track. And my first track is going to be the acoustic guitar. This is going to be like my rhythm guitar. It's going to be able to lay kind of the canvas for the rest of the song. So I am using the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Luckily, it has this software program where I can clearly see how loud my input is. So I do have this microphone here that we will be using when it comes to recording vocals and some other instruments. But I wanted to show you how to record direct with your guitar. So I've got my acoustic guitar plugged into channel 1, the very front of the Focusrite Scarlett interface. And to set the gain levels, they have a neat feature called auto gain. So I can essentially hit this auto gain button. I'm going to then strum a bunch of chords. I have decided to put this song in the key of E. So as it's doing the auto gain settings, it'll set the perfect levels for my recording. So let me go ahead and hit auto gain. So after playing for a little bit, it believes that the best gain settings for this guitar is right at 18 dB. It's being plugged directly into the front of my audio interface. Now, a great way to check it in Presonus Studio One is to open up the Mix tab. And over here on the left side of the screen, you'll see this arrow pointing to a vertical bar. It says Show Inputs. When I show inputs, it'll give me a readout of my audio interface. So if I start playing chords on the guitar, sounds great. Now you can see that the peak levels, which was this very quick blue bar bouncing up and down, that was basically hovering. My peaks were right around -12, and that had an RMS value of at least -24, possibly around -18 or so, which is great. That's going to be totally fine for recording. So whenever you're setting your input levels, whether you're recording vocals, bass guitar, drums, don't be thinking necessarily about your mix just yet. You want to make sure you have a healthy signal going in for your recording, and then we can mix it later. So my peak value, I need this to be right around -12 or so. And then my average volume needs to be somewhat around this area as well. You can adjust your gain settings as needed, but that's what the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 is primarily aiming for. It looks like they want the peaks to be around -12, which is great. I'm going to go up to this plus button for add tracks. You can also hit T on your keyboard, a little shortcut there. Now we're being asked, what type of audio track would you like to add? So an audio track is anything that we're recording in real life, anything that has space around it. My vocal, if I'm singing into this microphone, that is an audio track. Here I have a MIDI keyboard. If I hit notes on this keyboard, nothing happens, okay? That's because this is referred to as an instrument track. So this is a MIDI controlled device. If I hit these keys, there's no sound coming out. I'm not recording. I'm not miking up this keyboard. This is basically a big controller. It's like a video game controller. This microphone, however, anything I record with this microphone is going to be referred to as an audio track. My guitar, my acoustic guitar, even though it is plugged in direct, even though this is an instrument, on Studio One, this is not an instrument track. I'm recording an audio track. I'm playing this in real life. I'm not depending on the computer to provide the sounds for me. So my audio track, I'm going to call this one Acoustic One. I've got one acoustic guitar track that I'm recording at this time. I want this to be a yellow track for acoustic. Makes sense to me. It is a mono track. If you want to record in stereo, you have to have 2 channels plugged into your audio interface. So if I mic'd up this acoustic guitar, that would be 1 channel that's still mono. If I plug the guitar into channel 1, going direct, that would be a second channel. So if I wanted to record in quote unquote stereo, it's basically asking for 2 sources. Right now it's just mono, and I'm plugged into channel 1 of my audio interface. I'm not going to use any presets, but you're welcome to load some presets if you want. The presets will have plugins already loaded on the channel. You can kind of experiment with that, but for the most part, it's best to learn these things on your own. You can create your own presets in the future. Output is going to main. I'll click OK. And one of the things we did earlier was when we clicked this wrench tool, we turned on this show track icons. Well, now if I click this empty space right here, I can actually add a picture of whatever it is I'm recording. And this is, again, just kind of a nerdy way of staying organized. But now, as you can see, my acoustic track has a nice big picture of an acoustic guitar. I can start recording. Now, again, we need to get the tempo down. So we've set it at 96 beats per minute. I've got this Word document here that I'll try to leave on screen so you can see what I'm playing. I will have an intro, but it's really just going to be an E chord building into the first part. Don't regard the arrangement up here just yet. I'll show you how to label that in just a minute. So with the acoustic guitar, I will play the whole thing through so you can get an example of what it's like to record a track. But just know that when we get to bass guitar, electric guitar, vocals, I will probably skip over some of those things just so you're not sitting having to wait through me singing through or playing through the whole song track by track. So here we have our acoustic guitar 1 track. There's a few buttons I want you to take note of. The mute function. If I want to mute this track, I simply just hit the M key on the keyboard, or I can click where it has mute. The solo button will come in handy once we get to mixing. When you have multiple tracks like drums, bass guitar, vocals, if you want to zero in on just one track, you want to mute everything else, you can just hit the S key on the keyboard, or you can click S for solo. This one here is very important. This is the arm for record button. So it's this little white circle. If I click it, as soon as I do, you might notice, at least in my ears, I can hear 2 acoustic guitars. Kind of sounds like I've got a chorus or some sort of delay pedal turned on. Well, that's because software monitoring by default is enabled. I have direct monitoring on my Focusrite Scarlett. I've got the direct button. It's all lit up green. So I can actually hear this guitar in real time in my headphones before it even goes into Presonus Studio One. So I do not need to use software monitoring. I'm just going to turn this blue icon off. And now when I strum the guitar, I'm hearing the guitar as it should be. Now, one of the things we did in our setup process, where if you're dealing with this latency, that delay where it sounds like a delay pedal is turned on, if you are depending on monitoring the software, you need to open up the Mix tab. And down here below the main fader, there is this Z, which says Enable Low Latency Monitoring. If you click this, what it will essentially do is it will process the audio. It'll devote more resources to processing the audio so that if I turn on software monitoring, it's not near as egregious. So all of that latency or delay that I was hearing before, it's been cinched up, which is going to come super in handy when it comes to electric guitar recording. Now, why wouldn't you just keep this on by default? We need to turn this off because what it's essentially doing is like freezing everything in place so that you can hear the audio as it is. Make sure that in between takes, when you're done recording, make sure you turn this low latency monitoring off whenever you're not needing it, okay? I'm going to turn software monitoring off because I have the monitoring from the Scarlett interface. I'm going to load my chord track here. And whenever I'm ready to record, I'm just going to have the C key so that my metronome is highlighted blue, as you can see there. I've got my headphones on. I can adjust my headphone volume on my Scarlett interface. I can load my chord chart. When I'm ready to record, the great thing about the first track is I can really just take my time with this. I'm just going to hit the record button, and then jump over to my chord track, and let's get our acoustic guitar going. All right, a few things to note. Again, I'm hitting that comma key with the arrow facing the left so I can get back to the beginning of the song. When I was done recording, I simply just hit the space bar on the keyboard. There's one of these chords that I decided just to go to the C sharp minor here. But back at the beginning of the song, if we want to listen to what I just recorded, I go back to the beginning with that comma key or the arrow. I'm going to hit the C key to turn off the metronome. I don't want to hear the metronome as I'm listening now. Let's hit the space bar and listen to what we've got. And as you can see, as that was playing, I was adjusting my arrangement. So I'm just clicking and dragging these tabs over. I want to change the name of this one to outro. And the outro, I can just make it pink. It doesn't matter what the color is. But all right, that sounds good to me. We're going to be adding instruments as we're going. And the great thing about recording is if you are unhappy with that acoustic guitar performance, if you want to go back and re-record, you can certainly re-record as often as you need to. We'll be dealing with that in future instruments, so we won't focus too much on the acoustic guitar. But I do want to fix this section at the end. I had the idea that at the end of this song, I would basically do this guitar riff, very similar to what you'd hear in like country music back in the day, something that's very familiar. And I want to have its own track. So the benefit of multi-track recording is I can right-click anywhere on this track here. I'm going to go to duplicate track. As soon as I do, you notice I now have acoustic 2. I want to arm acoustic 2 for recording, and I want to turn off the arm record for acoustic 1. If you have the record button enabled on both of these tracks, it will record on top of your audio. So if I hit record here, you can see it recorded 2 on the exact same track. I don't want to do that. So Command Z to undo. I want to make sure that I turn off the record enable button for acoustic 1. That will essentially lock acoustic 1 in. And now I want to zero in on this outro. So at the end of the song, we're basically doing this da 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 boom. Very familiar. You'll hear what's going on. But what I want to do is I need to be able to practice this part that I'm wanting to record. So I'm going to pick a good spot, possibly on measure 11. And just above the timeline here, I'm going to set a loop region. Basically, when you go just above the loop, just above the timeline, you can set a loop region just by clicking and dragging. And I want to extend this gray bar all the way over to the downbeat pretty much of measure 14. Now, if I hit the question mark key or the slash key, it will enable a loop. And with the loop enabled, I have a couple of choices. I can go ahead and hit record if I want to. And what will happen is it will record on acoustic 2 over and over and over again, which in fact, that's the way we're going to go so I can teach this process to you. It's a great way to capture a recorded take because often if you're in a moment of inspiration, you'll be thinking to yourself, I really wish I'd hit the record button. Well, you might as well go ahead and record. If you've got the space on your computer for it, just let it keep recording as it's looping over and over again. Doesn't matter if you mess up. You can just re-record as it hits the next time on the loop. So I've got my loop region set. It's highlighted blue. I've got acoustic 2 over here, still plugged into channel 1. I'm going to hit record with the metronome on, and we'll just loop record this region until I've got it down. Okay, so a great thing is when I'm done with recording, I hit the space bar, and you're probably wondering, where did all those takes go? Well, if you look right here at the bottom left, you can see a little burger stack. And basically wants you to select what take you want to listen to. Now, personally, It's pretty much always going to be the last take that I recorded is the one that I'm happiest with. That's why I hit the space bar. But as you can see, if I zoom into the waveform here, this is take 4. As soon as I hit take 3, you notice it looks a little different. I can right click, go to select take 2. Let's take a listen to some of these with the metronome off. Yeah, didn't like that one as much. I'm going to go select take 4. Great. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of editing because I like where the chord ended on the riff, but I don't like where we ended the chord here on the main take. So one quick change I can make is with the slice tool or the split tool. Go ahead and say the right thing here. Yeah, the split tool. I'm going to hit my command key. I'm going to make a cut right here on measure 13, the third beat. I've made a cut, and now I can click and drag this chord here. I just click and drag it over where it needs to be, and now let's listen to how they line up together. That's a whole lot better as opposed to if I listened to before. Here, how they're clashing with each other. And now whenever you make a move like this, it's good to just go ahead and put in what's called a crossfade. So if I have this audio track selected, just click anywhere to highlight it. If I hit X on my keyboard, it will create what's called a crossfade. Crossfade is super crucial if you're making editing decisions like this because it's fading in the new audio while the old audio is fading out. So let's take a listen here. Very good. Okay, so that's it for the acoustic guitar. We've got a lot more instruments to record, so let's switch over to what's next. All right, next, believe it or not, we're going to go ahead and add some drums. Now, the drums I'm going to be recording, even though I do have a real drum set. I've got an acoustic set. We have an electronic set at the church as well. I'm going to show you how you can add drums to your session virtually. So we're going to open up the Browse tab. And if you went through the installation instructions I gave earlier, we're going to go over to Instruments. And I want you to click and drag under Presonus. You should have an Impact. Okay, so Impact is Presonus is basically like a drum sampler. We're going to click and drag over to any open space, and you'll notice that there is now a new track called Impact. Up here at the top left of Impact, you should have some different presets. You probably don't have the same presets I do, but I'm going to try and find something that is very familiar. At the top left, you should see this presets drop-down menu. You can go over to one called Tom Brechtlein drums. It's the most realistic one sounding on the kit. I can just click where it has kick and snare. Sounds good to me. So we've got our drum kit selected. I can click X here. And whenever you're adding drums, you just double click to add a new MIDI region. And we're going to try and create a drum groove. Now, when it comes to like MIDI drums, if I'm not playing it with my hands, it's usually going to be pretty simplified just to give me a little bit of a beat. So if I double click, it's going to create this MIDI region. And then you can open up the edit window. I'll go ahead and close Browse here. When you're looking at this edit window, this is essentially what we would call the piano roll. Now, this one is specifically set for drums, but if you're doing something with a piano, you can click the keyboard icon just here on the left. We'll go back to drums. I can either use the paint tool, which is 3 down here on the edit window. I can go in with the paint tool, and wherever I click, there's going to be a new kick drum added. You can see it's broken down into 16th notes. I can change the time base so that it's showing me 30-second notes if I want to. Most of the time, 16th note is going to be what I need it to be. So I'll basically go out and just build a beat. So on the downbeat of each measure, I definitely want to have a kick drum. Let me see if I can build out. Let's do a 2-measure fill. So I've clicked and dragged this MIDI region so that now I'm looking at measures 4 and 5. I'll go ahead and add a kick drum hit wherever I believe there needs to be one. And then we'll have a snare drum hit as well. We'll put that on 2 and 4. Something like that. Essentially just building out your beat. I might do a little offbeat thing, holding the shift key to select the downbeats of each of these hi-hat hits. You can really make sure that those are getting 100%. These as well need to be 100%. Okay, that's essentially going to be my basic groove. If I click on the impact keys right here, I can go into this impact kit. And if I want to mess with any of these samples, like the hi-hat closed, I can click this here and I can go through and mess with some filters. If I want it to be a little bit more rolled off, I can turn this cutoff knob down a little bit. Let's select a loop region for it. And as it's looping, you're going to notice me going through and tweaking some of these samples. So I'm essentially mixing the kick drum, the snare, and the hi-hat before we get to the actual mixing stage. All right, that'll do for now. So I've got this 2-measure loop essentially. And if I select the MIDI region here, I can close this edit window. If I want to go throughout the whole song and have this beat, I can just click this MIDI region and hit D on the keyboard, and it will create a duplicate of that MIDI beat. So let's take a listen to the song. And I'm basically going to selectively edit when I want that drum groove to happen. Yeah, so here at the end, I need this to end abruptly. Right there, that beat. I'm going to make a cut with my split tool. I'll hit delete that. And that'll be it. Now you can do different things. We can go in and add a picture of a drum set if we want to. We know that's our drums. I can change the drum color to red. Usually go with red for drums. I can click and drag this track up. So we've got drums and then acoustic guitars. Next, we can go in and add a bass guitar so we can kind of fill out the sound a little bit more. If you really like what's going on with the drums, there's a couple of different ways to process this. But if you click and drag across all these MIDI regions and then hit Command B on the keyboard, Command B will bounce those MIDI regions into their own audio tracks. So you can see that looks a lot more familiar to us as a drum kit than the other one did. I can rename this drum kit bounce. I can give it that drum kit icon. And at any point, if I need to go and reference the original MIDI, I can simply unmute it, hold Shift and then M. I can edit this MIDI and I can bounce it out again if I need to, but I'll essentially just leave that all muted for now. So essentially we have our bounce of our MIDI drums. Now we need to add a bass guitar. So go ahead and grab that. Now my bass guitar is going into the same channel I was using for the acoustic guitar, but we always need to check our volume, basically the gain setting. So I'm going to hit auto gain. I'm going to play a little bit of the bass and see what happens. Okay. All right, very similar results. What do we get? 21, so the bass had to be turned up a little bit louder. If I go ahead and check it here on the inputs. Great. I go in here to add a track, just hit T. I'm gonna add an audio track, name it bass. Bass track will be blue. It's going into input 1. I can add a picture here. If I go into guitars, I can add a picture of a bass. I'll arm it for recording. We go to the beginning of the song, probably about measure 2 or so. Make sure my playhead is in place. I'll turn on my click track, though it may not be needed since we have those quantized drums there. And we'll play some bass. Now on the bass guitar, I'm going to introduce you a little bit to Melodyne, which is the pitch correction software. Typically, Melodyne is going to be used for vocals, but you can also use it on instruments that are, I guess you would say, monophonic, like the bass guitar. So if I right-click anywhere on the bass guitar audio waveform, I should have an option under Audio for Edit with Melodyne. On the Mac, you can hit Command-M. Now, Melodyne, if you haven't used it before, it may ask you to go to their website and you need to register your product. I've upgraded my copy of Melodyne, so I believe I'm on like whatever that middle tier is. What is it? Melodyne Assistant. Typically, with even the intro version of Melodyne, you'll be able to do the basic things that I'm doing in this video. But as you can see, we have all of our bass notes here. I can simply click and drag, select whatever notes I want to. And the easiest way to do it, which if you trust yourself that you played pretty close to the right notes, I can highlight all of my notes here and then I can go to this like macro pitch correction and I can just click and drag pitch center. And as you turn this up, what it's essentially doing is it's taking things that were slightly sharp, slightly flat, and it's just moving them to the middle of whatever the note is, regardless of what key you're in. If you sang a G sharp and it's supposed to be an F sharp, it's going to put you on a G sharp. This is not going to snap you into the key. There's other settings for that. And then pitch drift as well. Usually I'll turn these things up to at least 40%. And on the bass guitar, you can go as high as you want because most people don't listen to songs and think, wow, that bass sounds really auto-tuned. So let's take a listen now. Yep, sounds good. And once you're done as well, really to commit Melodyne to what's going on, if I have that selected, just like we did with the drums, if I hit Command-B, it will imprint Melodyne onto that track so I don't have to go back and forth over and over again. Feeling like I want to add some piano, let's go ahead and do that. It's very similar to the process we had with adding drums, but I'm going to scroll down this time. In my Presonus kit, I'm going to go with, let's see here, under Presence, I'm going to go to Piano, Presonus Studio Grand, and I will add this one for Grand Piano Condenser onto a new track. Click and drag it over. Now you need to set up your MIDI controller device. If you have a keyboard like this, mine is plugged in via USB cable. You can use a MIDI cable if you want, as long as your computer accepts that. To set up your MIDI device, you want to go to Song, then Song Setup. I go down here to Preferences, then External Devices. So here I have my complete control from Native Instruments. What you want to do is go to Add. When you click Add, there will be this window that pops up. You don't have to go with any of these presets that they've made for other companies. For a long time, I had one of those M-Audio Oxygen keyboards, and they did not at the time have the right device model. But you want to make sure that if you're using anything that has keys on it like this, even if it's one of these controllers that has a bunch of pads and stuff, you want to go to New Keyboard. You want to name your manufacturer. So it could be, Green Family. Device name is My Favorite Keys, whatever it might be. Then you want to tell it where you're receiving data from. So mine would be coming in through my keyboard. If you've got your keyboard powered on and plugged in correctly, you should see it populate here on the receive from. That's the main setting there. And then you would essentially hit OK, and then it will show up as an option. Okay. So I've already got my keyboard set up. So if I hit the keys on the keyboard, okay, I'm hearing a little bit of latency just from what I'm playing to what's being recorded. This will be different depending on what virtual instrument you're using, and also have to do with your software settings. So what I might do is if I'm happy with this piano condenser setting, I might do what we did before and go over here to the Mix tab and turn on low latency monitoring. And that will be usable for me. So now I've got my grand piano setting. I can go ahead and record some piano for this song. So I'll set a loop region. My piano skills, not as developed as my guitar playing. We'll give this a go. Okay, now when it comes to piano playing on the MIDI, especially if you're dealing with some latency, you're going to notice it's way off from the beat. So I don't mind going in and doing some quantizing for now. I can hold Command A and it will select all of these MIDI regions when I'm in the edit window. If I go up to this quantize button, or if I hit Q on my keyboard, it's going to snap it to the closest position on the grid. And for this song, I don't think I went more than an eighth note. So when I have the eighth note grid selected, if I hit Q, we'll then shift everything so that it is perfectly in time. When it's quantized, you still need to go through and listen and make sure everything lined up where it's supposed to go. So I can see a couple of notes here that are stacked on top of each other. They probably need to be spread out. You can easily just click and drag the notes where they need to go. If you don't want it to snap to the grid, you can hold the shift key after you've clicked and you can easily slide it so it's a little bit more humanized if that's what you're going for. With a piano track on a song like this, it's really not supposed to be super forward, so I really want it to be as in the pocket as possible. Let's take a listen. If I line up on my playhead, if I zoom in really close, I can see right where this hit is supposed to be. So I've got it selected on that timeline. And if I scroll or zoom in here on my piano roll, I should have all of these notes, since it's a little more free flowing at the end, I should be lined up with this line here. So if I click, hold the shift key, I'm going to drag these over right there. And even though it looks like it's out of time, it certainly is. It's at the end of the song. Take a listen now. And I can extend it out if I want those to be held longer. Just click and drag as they were highlighted. Great. All right, now let's add some electric guitar, and everything I'm doing with electric guitar is going to be direct into the audio interface, and I'm going to be using Ampire, which is one of Presonus's guitar amp simulation effects. Turn off low latency monitoring, go to add tracks. Electric guitar 1, we'll make this one green. Mono input 1. Give a picture to our piano here. And we'll make the piano purple. Electric guitar. Now grab my Strat. And again, I can bounce the piano track down with Command B. Bounce into place. All right, my electric guitar, I do need to do a gain setting again. Make sure the auto gain is set. And even though I won't be strumming a lot, I'll go ahead and do my loudest portion. Now, since I'm using built-in effects, I'm going to open up the Inspector tab. And with the guitar selected, the first thing I want to add is Ampire from Presonus. So I'm clicking next to where it says Inserts, plus tab, going to Presonus Ampire. Now, Ampire has a bunch of presets that you can load if you're interested. Let's go with something crunch. American Overdrive sounds good to me. I do want to use the tuner. So if you click the little tuning port here, should be able to tune my guitar. If this isn't working for you, if the tuner is not registering anything, you do have to have software monitoring on. You are forced to use software monitoring if you plan on listening to what the amp is giving you. You can notice we're having that awful delay again. So in this situation, I'm going to turn off direct monitoring. I just want to be hearing what the software is giving me. But on top of that, once I have a familiar setting, I want to go in and enable that low latency monitoring switch. On the pickup position you like. And now I can play in real time with these effects enabled. So don't have anything particular in mind. I'm just going to play through, let it record, see if I come up with something that I like. Real simple guitar part there. Let's see if I add some lead stuff. That would be fun. I'm going to duplicate track. Again, I'm going to record enable this one here. So this is my second guitar. I try to do more lead stuff. That would be fun. I can mess with Ampere at any point, but I do need to turn off low latency monitoring. Turn up this rat pedal quite a bit. And when it comes to the electric guitars, one thing you're probably going to want to do is pan them out, especially when you start doubling stuff up. So a really easy thing to do is if you have the inspector window open, like I said before, this kind of gives you like a glimpse of one track at a time. I'm going to take electric guitar 2 and I'm going to put it all the way to the right. If I just click where it has this C, if I hit R and then enter, it's going to put it in my right ear. And if you want to pan guitar 1 to the left, you can click this vertical blue bar. It's another way of doing it. You can just drag it all the way to the left. Or you can click here and you can put L50, whatever you want it to be, and it will snap where it needs to go. So I got one guitar on the left, one guitar on the right. You start panning stuff out, a good way to go ahead and start getting a little bit into mixing. Piano, you can go right 50, that would be fine. Bass in the middle, and put this guitar, acoustic guitar more in the middle, but let's go left 20. Experiment. Do what you will. This is a very basic song. You, of course, add way more tracks if you want to, but it's kind of giving you a glimpse of track by track. We'll add vocals in just a second. Let's take a listen to what we got so far. Okay, a few things to take note of. This guitar is quite loud, so I'm taking this fader and I'm just bumping it down so that it has a little bit more of a similarity to the other tracks. Let's take a listen. That'll do. Keep in mind, too, that when you're recording music, most of the time you're working with raw tracks, especially the more in the box you are, if you're using a lot of MIDI stuff. It's great to have a sculpted sound as soon as you can, but with raw tracks, we will get to mixing just a little bit later. So last thing we need to add is a vocal. Vocal's not my strong suit, but we're going to add this one in. I'll be recording using this TLM 103, which is going to be plugged into channel 1. Do the same thing as before. I want to plug it in and get the auto gain going as soon as possible. And what we need to do, often when it comes to vocals, the track is going to be significantly louder than the vocal is. So a quick thing you can do to just adjust the overall volume is to take your main fader here on the mix window and go to -10. And at -10, you should be able to have more competitive volume with your main track. Testing 1, 2. And with recording vocals, you can do the same thing we've been doing all along with guitars. You can set a loop region and just do one section at a time if you want. I'll try to go through and do my best, the best that I can, since it is such a short song. I'll go ahead and record.
You know, I hope that you find what you're after. And I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share.
All right, so now we're going to briefly cover a few mixing decisions that you can be making. I have switched my headphones. These are open back headphones, meaning that if I were using a click track and I were in a recording situation, it would definitely be able to pick up the click track coming through on the microphone. But I switched these over because these are a little bit more accurate and a little bit easier for me to be using when it comes to making mixing decisions. So I've got in this mix, I've got a vocal, I've got 2 electric guitars, a piano track, a bass guitar, 2 acoustic guitars, and this MIDI drum kit. The first thing I want to do is I want to start building my backing track before I get to the vocal. If the last thing I'm mixing is the vocal, I want to be able to sit the vocal on top, because in most music out there, if you have the vocal is going to be top priority. So I'm going to work my way up towards it. So you need to familiarize yourself with the mix window. Here on the side, we can exit out of this input metering. I'm going to cover up some of these things here. And this will look traditionally more like a mixing console. So each of these vertical columns, these are my different tracks. And up here where it says inserts, this is where we can add our plugins like we have Ampire already. Now, all these tracks are being funneled into the main 2 bus, okay? So mainly everything you're listening to is coming through this main bus. It is being summed into the main bus. But all along the way, we can create different bus tracks. So buses are basically pit stops on the way getting to the main bus. For instance, I'm going to go ahead and select a few of these tracks here. Like I'll go ahead and create a drums bus. So I will right click this one and go to add bus for selected channels. When I do, it now has bus 1, which I can double click and rename drums. So now the output of my drums track, you can see right here, if I click this, instead of it going to the main bus, it's going to the drums bus. From the drums bus, it is going to the main bus. For my other tracks, like my guitars, I can select my acoustic guitars and my electric guitars by holding the Command key. I'm going to right-click each of these. I'll say Add Bus for selected channels. Now, these are going to be inside my guitars bus. And then my guitars bus, you can select a bus for a bus. I'm going to create another bus called a music bus. Now, why would you want to do all of this busing? It seems like an unnecessary step. Well, with every time you create a bus, you're creating another potential for you to process multiple tracks all within one track. So that means less plugins. That means less processing having to happen on your mix. And then there is an added potential that if we have a music bus, we can also have a vocals bus. Okay, so if I create this bus here, I'm going to call this one vocals. Even though there's one vocal, you imagine you could have your background vocals go into this one as well. And then from my vocals bus, I'm going to the main bus. From my music bus, I'm going to the main bus. My drums bus, I'll usually just send that straight to the main because drums are a lot more dynamic. They need their own processing typically, rather than getting smashed with all the other music. So I'll go to this piano track here. If I want to change where it's going, I just click where it says main. I want to send this one to the music bus. My bass guitar track, I'll send this one to music as well. And make sure everything is being sent where it needs to go. Great. Now, any of these tracks, if you don't want to see them, like if you're done with doing your MIDI stuff, you've already bounced these out, you can just right click and go to disable track. And then you can right click and go to hide track. So you're not having to see it on the screen. But when you disable it, it's also going to free up any sort of processing because now your computer is not having to work on those virtual instruments. It also just looks a lot cleaner. So let's start with our drums. Now, MIDI drums are going to be a little bit more, in a lot of ways, they're more difficult than working with acoustic drums. Acoustic drums kind of already have a sound to them. They're already in a space. But with fake drums or MIDI drums, we're really trying to create that edginess and that realness that we're missing when it comes to electronic stuff. So I'm going to set a loop region for the song. I'm going to let the drums track play. I'm just going to listen to what is it that I'm not liking about this track too much.
Hope that
Now, it sounds like it's already got a little bit of ambience already. I'm going to go ahead and click where it says inserts on my drum track. And you can also do this on the drums bus if you have more than one drum track. I'm going to open up this EQ. This is called Pro EQ. whenever you're EQing, it's very similar to like in your car system. We are dealing with low end down here. So I'm going to take this orange frequency band. I'm going to boost it. I'm going to move it around so that you can hear what an EQ is doing. Typically with this EQ, the first EQ, I'm going to find something I don't like and I'm going to trim it. I'm going to cut it back. And then later on, we can boost things that sound good to us. So let me let the drums loop play. And I'm going to move this frequency band around and you can hear how we have low end on one side, we have trebly stuff in the other. Now, I've certainly changed over the years because there's a lot of rules in mixing that you learn them at first and you're like, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't boost low end because it's just feeding my own bias of I like low end stuff. But I really did like the sound of that kick drum coming out more. But there were also some frequencies you probably heard that you were like, ooh, that sounded really nasty, particularly around here and then up in the mid range as well. So let's take a listen for things that we don't like. And then what I'm going to do is cut. This Q control here will basically change how narrow the band is. So we're dealing with less frequencies. We can be more specific. But didn't like that very much. And then up here in the green region, there was something else I didn't like. All right, and while I'm here, I'll go ahead and switch this low cut. We'll make this one right here. We'll go ahead and make use of the yellow one, and we will boost this low end that I liked so much. And then with the hi-hats, let's see if there's something else I can find that I like. That sounds pretty good to me. Now, the next thing I'm going to deal with is some compression. With MIDI drums, they're already so compressed, like everything and velocity-wise, pretty much around 100. So I'm not really going for like, this isn't dealing with volume issues. It's just trying to tame everything in. So with the compressor, when you're starting out, I highly recommend you check out the presets. Let's go up here at the top. We'll go to drums. BD usually stands for bass drum. You have also the drum bus. So this will be something that's useful for treating all of your drums. I'll just set this one to generic. And then when you set the preset, you mainly want to move the threshold so that you have some sort of compression happening throughout the song. Okay, so I'm going to turn down the threshold. And here on the right, you'll notice the yellow bar starts dipping down. That's when I've got some compression happening. I want to find a good happy place. Okay, we got a hot signal going in, so I probably need to go in here to the EQ and turn this down quite a bit. After the compressor, I'm really going to jump over to the bass guitar track and try to blend it in with my drums track. I'm always favoring having more and more bass, but I'm going to go in and add a compressor, and I want the bass to sit nicely with the kick drum especially. You can go in and add a preset again if you want to under guitar. To that bass guitar, we can go with basic bass guitar. Take a listen. Okay, basic EQ, we are adding some low end to get that low rumble. And then right around, let's see what frequency we're dealing with here, 195 hertz or so. Got a big cut that's kind of taking out a lot of that mud in the bass guitar. There's a little bit of sizzle around 1K basically. Just emphasizing that because that will tend to get lost the more you turn down your bass guitar. So let's listen to the drums and the bass guitar together. All right, let's add in our piano track. All right, this is a point where we need to add an effects track. So I'm going to right click, go to add effects channel. And on this effects channel, I want to add a reverb. A reverb is going to simulate the sound of a room, some ambient space. I'll load a concert hall preset. Everything is being fed to this reverb. So instead of putting the reverb on the individual tracks, I go down here to where it says sends, and I can add this effects one. What's great about this is I can blend how much or how little is going into my reverb. I'm going to rename this effects one, double click and say reverb. That reverb needs to output into my main bus, and we can control how loud the reverb is in total. We can bring it up or down here. Typically, we'll start with -10 on the reverb, and then we'll blend in the tracks as we're going. And that kick drum's got some really high frequency content in it. So I'm going to add an EQ to my reverb. I'm actually going to go in here and roll off some high end and low end as well to give us a nice mid-range reverb. So I got my piano sitting at about -7 with reverb being sent just a couple of dB less than 0. The drums reverb, not too much, but it's a send level of -10. And my overall reverb is at -10 as well. Let's add our electric guitars. Now, when it comes to electric guitar, a lot of times people's guitar effects and amps are already set up for success. We got the Amplifier plugin that we can mess with here. Let's add those to the mix. Great, track sounding a little bit better. Let's add in these two acoustic guitars together. Now, if I want to copy this over to the other acoustic guitar, I just click and drag this EQ plugin. And then when I add these acoustic guitars to the reverb, take a listen to how it's going so far. I can definitely hear with the acoustic guitar that is a direct acoustic guitar signal. It's not the worst thing in the world, but if you mic up an acoustic guitar, it will sound less tinny. it's less mid-range honky. But that is our backing track. Now we're going to go in and especially treat our vocals the right way. So we're going to go in, and first thing I want to add is what's called the fat channel. So in Presonus Studio One, we've been using all stock plugins up to this point. They have what's called the fat channel, and the fat channel is very similar to what you see on a console. It's just basically giving you the basics. It also has a few emulations that we like as well. So I'm going to unmute the vocal. And as it's playing, you're going to notice a few things I'll talk over real quick. The high pass filter is essentially just cutting off some low end. You can see on the EQ, there it is right there. It's cutting off all that rumble. So we'll start with the high pass filter. The gate is basically going to mute whenever it reaches a certain threshold. We can mess with the threshold here. Everything below that threshold, when I'm not singing, I want it to mute. Very handy in a live situation. You can go in, of course, and do more processing as you get more advanced with this. The compressor lets you, if you click this downward facing arrow, you can switch to an emulation of a compressor. So I can load an 1176 right here on the channel. We've got the attack time, release time, input, output. I'll try to get some major compression. And then EQ, I can also switch to something like Pultec style EQ if I want, and just make sure you have these enabled as we're going. And then we can use a limiter if we want, which I may use in this situation just to give you an overview of what you can get from the fat channel. So here's all the effects. I'm going to let the vocal play, and as it's playing, I'll be making some adjustments.
Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe and share. Subscribe and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe and share. Oh, just like, subscribe and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe and share. Oh, just like, subscribe and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe and share. Oh, just like, subscribe and share.
So here's some basic settings I have with the fat channel, and feel free to copy these if you want to. Personally, I think the fat channel is certainly usable. As you get into buying more third-party plugins, like from Universal Audio, FabFilter, you'll get a little bit more nuanced deals going on, but that's going to give me a lot of the basics. And then I can go in. A few things I wanted to address were with an EQ. So I'm going to have a separate EQ loaded here. And then we're going to talk about what I was mentioning earlier with the reverb plugin. I'll go ahead and load a room reverb directly on my vocal channel. I'll have it bypassed for now. Let's go into the EQ and address. There's some low end stuff that I'm still hearing on the vocal I want to address with this EQ.
You find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe and share. Oh, just like, subscribe and share.
Okay, so this is my basic vocal, but I want to add this room reverb. Now, if you add a reverb on a mono channel, it will be a mono reverb. If you want to have that spread, one thing you can do is take your mono channel and click that circle that's right next to the word mono, and we'll basically switch it to stereo. Now, it doesn't make it stereo just by itself. It enables like stereo plugins to do what they need to do. So room reverb will be a stereo sound. I'll switch that back and forth once we get a reverb setup that we like. So again, I'm going to go, let's do vocal ballad, do a ballad preset here. I'm going to turn this reverb on. When you've got a reverb directly on a channel, you want to mess with the mix knob. The mix knob is basically how much of the reverb are you hearing as opposed to the dry signal. So right now it's set to 20%. We'll most likely dial that back, but I'll be able to do some stuff on the screen so you can listen to what's happening as I'm doing it, and then you'll see what I end up with.
You find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share. Hope that you find what you're after.
Okay, so a few things I was doing there on the vocal. On this EQ, I've got another low cut filter to get out of some of that rumble. As you can see, I switched to this D. So the D stands for dynamic. So we can actually have a dynamic EQ. Now, dynamic EQ is essentially like a compressor that's limited to only a certain frequency. So in this situation, I like using a dynamic EQ, something around 5K or so. This is where the S's and T's. So if something feels really harsh, instead of just cutting out your high end, you only want to cut out those S's and T's as they're happening. So the only way you will hear any decrease in the high end is whenever something egregious comes through. So we're just counteracting that. It works basically like a de-esser plugin will work. And then my room reverb ended up with just a 10% mix. Gives it plenty enough for what this song needs. Last thing I want to talk about is here on our main bus, we want to add some effects. So this is really where we have an opportunity to glue all these tracks together. So I'm going to go up to the main bus and do some processing. I'll go ahead and add an EQ. We'll also add a limiter, which will come in handy later. And let's see. Add a compressor. Now, if you've got more Presonus plugins loaded than I do have them loaded. I just have them hidden because I've just gotten aware when it comes to Presonus, the plugins that you see visible are the ones that I use all the time. I just didn't want to have that many plugins loaded. So I've got an EQ, a compressor, and a limiter loaded. Let's go ahead and do some balancing. And this is going to affect everything. So it's going to affect the vocal, the drums, guitars, and so forth.
And I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share. Hope that you find what you're after, and I hope that you'll watch till the end. But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share.
Okay, I'll probably take the reverb down just a little bit. The -12 there. On my mix bus, basically I'm boosting some low end. Love having some low end. I've got the yellow band at 230 hertz, taking out just a couple or 3 dB there. Up at 1K, this is where the electric guitars tend to be really harsh. Taking out a little bit there and then boosting the high end. This is very typical. This is like the hype sound you're going to get with EQ, boosting low end, boosting high end, cutting some of the mid range. It's very hyped. Compressor, I've got it set to a 1.9 to 1 ratio. 30 milliseconds on the attack, 50 milliseconds on the release, and I'm just looking to tame some of the most egregious kick drum and snare drum hits, because again, the less dynamic we have with some of those hits is going to make the song kind of squish together and glue like we're used to hearing. The limiter should be one of the last things you have on your plugin chain. I've got the ceiling set to, let's say, -1. Basically, the limiter is a compressor that works extremely hard to get the most out of your tracks without clipping. So it will make sure that as things are processing or as this thing is being sent to an MP3, we don't want to have any clipping, but we also want to bring, this is the moment where we were conservative when we were recording our tracks, but now we can add 5 decibels of volume to everything together, and it will make a noticeable difference. So here's just a before and after. Here's before the limiter. Here's after.
But if I never get the chance to tell you, I hope you like, subscribe, and share. Oh, just like, subscribe, and share.
All right, now we're basically ready to export our song. Again, there's so much more you can get into with the software. I highly encourage you to hit the like and subscribe buttons. There's many videos already on my channel, and there will continue to be more videos on this channel giving you tutorials on how to get more advanced with Studio One, whether that's in mixing or editing in general. But I'm going to set my loop region. Essentially, we're going to go in a couple of beats after measure 14 and then right at measure 3. So from 3 to all the way to 14. This is the length of my song. Then I'm going to go up to the top where it says song, export mix down. All right, so now it's going to bring up this window where it's going to ask me what I want to name the song. I'm titling it the YouTube song, and I'm going to export 2 different formats. I'm going to do a WAV file and an MP3. MP3 is going to be a lower file size, which is good for like sending out a demo or somebody just needs to take a quick listen. It will be less quality than a WAV. Usually WAV files at 24-bit, 48K. It's the most similar as to what you've been listening to in the session. So WAV file, 24-bit, 48K. MP3, 48K, constant bit rate, and I have it set to 320 kilobytes per second. It is going to export between the loop. Okay, so often that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to select a loop region. You can also create a start and end marker. Remember before when we were talking about the arrangement window, you can add markers for your beginning and ending of your song. We don't want to adjust the loudness on this one. We're going to export our main stereo bus, and then it is going to be automatic. We don't need to import to a new track. We will write the tempo to audio files. That's fine. Close after export. I click OK. It will then process our song. And here we go. We have 2 audio files now, the YouTube song WAV, the YouTube song MP3. From there, you can essentially load this into whatever program you want, send it to your phone, take a listen. Like I said, there's so much left to do in Presonus Studio One. YouTube is recommending you check out this video here. Feel free to check out any of the videos on my channel. I hope you'll consider hitting the subscribe button and let me know in the comment section if you have any questions or specific areas of Studio One you would like more of a deep dive in. My name is Chris Green. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'll see you next time.
Subscribe and share.